As a kid growing up in the 1980s, I loved synthpop, but I was transfixed the first time I heard the sound of a gated pad. It was unlike any sound I've ever heard before. It seemed to take quite a boring organ sound like this, and transform it into this. And I just thought that was the most amazing sound I'd ever heard. It was emotional and mesmerizing and rhythmic and glistening. And then when I found out you could put it on guitars too and kind of make your guitars sound like synths, well, I was hooked. I played synths and guitars, and I decided I wanted this to be part of my signature sound. Well, that was about 1986. We're now 40 years later. Really and truly, it's only in the last few years that I finally managed how to make that sound every time so that it had the same emotional impact as I experienced on those records I heard growing up. There were lots of false starts, and if you think you know how to do it, if you think you know the technique, you're probably doing it wrong. So I'm going to show you in this video how to get it exactly right every time. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in London in the UK, and I was playing in bands since the age of 15. I played synth and guitars, and I was listening to records by guys like New Order, who of course use lots of gates on their synths, as well as guys like Cocteau Twins, who use lots of gates on their guitars. And that was the sound that I wanted to make. So when my band played live, for example, we were somehow getting a gate effect using some tremolo that synced up, or something like that. And then in terms of the keyboards, if we had them sequenced, we were probably just sequencing the chords. And this is what it sounded like. Good effort, especially for kids, but I knew it wasn't the sound that I wanted to make. I knew that there was something very wrong. That even though technically my guitars were being gated and the synths had that rhythm, the sound just didn't have the same emotional impact that I got from the records I was listening to. And I knew that because it wasn't having that emotional impact on me. And of course, when I played the demos to people, including manager and record companies, they were kind of left cold. And it was really difficult because it was the first time, I think, that I'd really not been able to achieve a musical effect. Now, I was classically trained, I was a good player, I really knew how to make guitar sounds. I didn't know how to make this. And to be honest, I felt like I'd let everyone down. And so I stopped trying to get that effect. And then later on, I actually stopped making synth pop and electronic music altogether, concentrated on guitar, joined some rock bands, and everything was great. But I never really solved that problem of how to get that incredible sound that I was selling. So now we fast forward about 20 years to 2006, and I end up getting a copy of Ableton Live in version 5, and actually I was getting it to record guitar music, which is a weird choice of DAW. Everyone else was using Logic. But for some reason, I was interested in the time-stretching stuff that Ableton did. So I got this copy of Ableton Live. All of a sudden, it was very primitive at the time, I fall in love again with making electronic music. And I start using electronic drums, processing guitars and vocals in wild ways. And it doesn't take long before I find myself getting out a gate plugin, rigging up a trigger key, putting in a rhythm, and trying to get that gated effect that I'd loved, that I'd heard in all those wonderful records by, New Order and Beloved and Shaman. Same thing happens. It just doesn't sound quite right. It sort of sounds like a bad facsimile of those records. It's sort of technically there. Technically the gate's happening in the right place, but it just isn't sitting it right. And it has zero emotional impact. And I can tell it. It's sort of maybe pretty, but it's not like the records that I'd heard. So I think, you know what, I'm not going to try this again. I mean, I don't know how they did it. There must be some studio trick that I didn't understand. Maybe it wasn't a gate. Maybe it was something else. It's all sort of lost production, mysterious secrets. Let me just move on and concentrate on being a rock guitarist in a post-punk band. And then something else happened by chance, which is about 10 years ago. The band I was in was making a record with a famous post-punk producer. He'd made a lot of hit records in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and really knew how all those old recording techniques worked and how records were made. And I was talking to him about how I'd never really figured out how to get that gated guitar sound or the gated pad sound on synths. And we weren't making a synth record, we were making a guitar record. But he said, oh yeah, you got to use a Drawmer, right? And I said, well, you just use a gate. I mean, it doesn't have to be a Drawmer. You just use a gate and you put the trigger in, right? And he said, no, it's got to be a Drawmer. And I said, why does it have to be a Drawmer? What's wrong with any other gate? And he said, look, what you got to understand is this. Before the Drawmer gate came out, gates weren't really very good. So all the studios we all had, and he thought for a minute, he said, I think we all had keypexes. They weren't very fast. And for the kind of gating that those guys were doing, they needed to be very fast because they were doing things like gating snares and trying to gate toms. And the keypex wasn't fast enough, he thought. And also, the Drawmer was the first gate to have this filter that you could apply to the detection circuit, the side chain, that then meant that you could gate your toms without the gate being triggered every time you hit a cymbal. So he said for that reason, as soon as the Drawmer came out, every studio just immediately cut over to it. And it was really only then, because they were in situ at the large studios, that people started experimenting and seeing the different sounds you could get. And I said, okay, but I still don't understand why it has to be a Drawmer to make like a gated pad sound. And he said, well, because it's got to be really fast. It's got to be really fast. And the Drawmer is really fast. And also, it's got a really good sort of envelope circuit. It's got attack. It's also got hold. It's got decay. It's got sort of range that you can use with the blend control. It does all these other things. Plus, he said, it sounds really good. So I thought, I mean, I was a bit skeptical. I still didn't really understand why it had to be a Drawmer. But I thought, well, I'll take his word for it. He knows what he's talking about. But I guess I'll never know, right? Because I'm not going to make a synthpop record anymore. And Drawmers are like thousands and thousands of pounds, right? So then I went on eBay, and they're not £1,000. They're like 75 quid. So I went back to my producer and I said, it's the DS201, right? He said, yeah, it's the DS201. And I said, they're like 75 quid on eBay. And he went, are they? I should get some. He's got a lot of gear. He doesn't actually have any Drawmer gates. And I said, well, I'll get one. So I got one. And I'll never forget this. I rigged it up. patched it in. It wasn't racked up or anything because I didn't know if I'd keep it. And I just like set a 909 rim shot into the sidechain, linked channels, played a pad through it, and oh my God, there was the sound. And I'm not even sure I can tell you really and truly what it is that makes that sound so special, but it is not like a plugin. In fact, as it happened, I happened to be recording a video of myself trying this out, and I was playing some custom patches and a Korg M1, I think, through it. It was absolutely transfixing. It was mesmerizing, completely mesmerizing. And I sent it to some people, and instead of them saying what they used to say, which is, yeah, good effort, I guess that's a bit tricky, please don't call us, we'll call you. People were saying, oh my God, what a wonderful sound. And I sent that to the producer, and he said, wow, I really think I better go and get myself a Drawmer DS201, and started scouring eBay. And that was the sound. As I now got 3 of them, and you can see them racked up behind me over some patch bays that handle things like all of the ins and the outs, but also some mults for duplicating the triggers. I use them every day in every session. If I'm just doing production or writing, I might use one of them to sort of duck kick drums and get that sidechain effect, which I've talked about in another video, which I put up there. But really, it's one of my go-to tricks if I ever get some kind of writer's block or producer's block. I'll put a rhythm sequence through it from another one on the tracks, dupe it out, put some pads through it, get a groove going. It solves a lot of problems. And I always think, I wonder if this will make it to the final cut, and it always does. And not only that, but when I do my productions, I also take the trigger key into my DAW. And then when I'm doing overdubs, I've often done overdubs through the gates as well. And of course, they are perfectly locked in because I'm not relying on MIDI. It's just a pulse. So it's all sample accurate stuff. And they sound incredible. They really do sound absolutely incredible. So that's pretty much my Drawmer journey and the story of, I guess, my love affair with these units. It's definitely partly to do with the fact that it was so important for me to finally, after almost 4 decades, be able to make that sound that I'd heard as a kid. That was really. But, you know, as I say to other people, it took us about 40 years to get together, but I'm never letting those things go. So let's hear them in action. And let's do a production using the Drawmer gates, and I'll show you the magic. Okay, so let's start by making something with the Drawmer gates. We'll base it sort of loosely on a new order track, which features gates in one of the mixes. So I've got a kick here. We're working at 120 BPM. I will just put some kicks in, just so we know where we are with the timing. I'll also put a snare in. Yeah. While I'm about it, let's put some hi-hats in. Turn the hi-hats up a little bit. Okay. Now, at the moment, I've got the rim shot routing into the gate. Now, if I go to the rim shot patch, I'll put a rim shot patch in. And you can already see over on the gates the lights flashing. I'll make it a 2-bar pattern with some variation. I'll dupe it out, and on the second pattern, okay, now if we actually turn off the rim shot like this, you can still see the lights flashing, because if I mute the other tracks, So here's just the rim shot. But now let's actually listen to the key. These are stereo linked, and that's really important. Right, so let's start up drums on the drum machine. And you can see the lights flashing on the Drawmer because even though we've got the rim shot turned down on the 909, the rim trigger is still feeding into the trigger input. So, okay, let's play a simple chord on the keyboard. And I put hold on, which now means I can walk over to the Drawmers and take them out of bypass like this. And immediately you've got that famous sound. Range all the way. Let's take the hold and decay off. The hold and decay sound pretty different. So here's some hold, which is very choppy. And the decay is snappier, but you need both to get that sort of famous sound. Bit of hold, bit of decay, and that's how you dial in that classic gated pad sound. I'll make this Moog bass track 8 bars long, and I'll just track it in like this. It's me changing the cutoff. No quantize on this. I can't imagine why you need to quantize this, right? So we're not going to have all these playing all parts of the sections. Now the strings is difficult. So what I'm going to do for the strings is I'm going to put a second rim shot part on. There's just all 16s. And I'll turn up the rim shot. And I'm actually going to mute the Moog for a moment. Right, now the reason for this is because to record the string arpeggios, and I'm going to record them manually because I haven't got an arpeggiosum that makes it exactly right. So that's now half speed, and that's the purpose of this 16s rim track, just so that when I'm recording at half speed I can hear. Right, so now let me find the strings. Okay, so now let's track it in. Sounds good to me. Let's take the BPM back up to 120. And now I can turn off that. Now, of course, I could quantize that, but I don't think I want to. But I do need to have it only happening in the second half of an 8-bar phrase. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to firstly copy it out, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to just delete. You know, there's lots of different ways of doing this, but this is the way that I do it in my workflow. This. So now it'll only happen. I just double check that. And maybe to get it really tight, maybe I just will do that. Okay, so that's all good. That's the string part. I'll do a fantasy part. And this is just going to be a 4-bar phrase. Very kind of simple. And I'll mute the strings while I'm doing it. And these aren't the exact parts. They're sort of as I remember them. I deliberately didn't kind of check it. I don't know if it's in the right key. I'm pretty sure it's 120 BPM, but I just wanted to kind of do it from memory. Now, let's do some slap bass. That'll be fine. Now let's do a 4-bar phrase. Right, and now let me put a kind of an FM bass. Yep, something like that. Don't know if I need to sequence that. Right, now let me mute the snare, and I'm going to do a snare fill at the end of every 8th bar. I'm going to go to another snare track. I'm going to make it 8 bars long, like that. There's my snare, but I'm going to go to the final 8 bar in the sequence. Da 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 da. It's kind of a new order type fill. Da 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 da. And it's kind of a little bit like the rim shot pan. Maybe it's the same. So now I'm going to go back to this snare track, which is just on the 2 and the 4. Okay, I'm going to make that 8 bars, but on the 8th bar, I'll take it out. So now you get this. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and here comes the fill. Very good. Okay, so that all works. Oh, and I'm going to do an Orch stab, and I'll make that an 8-bar sequence. There we go. That will absolutely do. Okay. So what I'm now going to do is this. I'm going to have 2 sequences going. So this is... turn the strings on, turn the rims off, that's pretty good, isn't it? So now finally we can play. If you like this video and you want to hear more stories about musical journeys and gear and see me actually work with synths and outboard stuff and sequences in the context of making actual music rather than demos, please like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. See you next time.